Kenya now is in a race because we are headed to 2027, and there is urgency for us as politicians to do what needs to be done and seen. And in that urgency of wanting to do things, many times we are finding ourselves doing things that cannot pass the prudent test or the prudence test. Some of the things we are doing are very good today, but they can be improved, because such statements, when we give them, we are not doing it to accuse anyone. We are doing it so that we have a debate that makes Kenya a better place. The Ministry of Roads, now through Kenha, is in the process of coming up with ways of tolling our roads or instituting charges on the usage of roads. And this may impact on the roads that are already built, but also on the projects that are in the pipeline to be built. Roads and infrastructure plays a critical role, but we have to always look at the cost of usage of this infrastructure. Of note is the road from the one we know is called Rironi Mau Summit Road, or Nairobi Nakuru Mau Summit Road, others may call it that way. And in the initial stage, we are talking about close to 170 kilometers of road. Kenyans in the western part of Kenya deserve this road to be dualled, and they deserve this road to be upgraded. But it will not serve our economy when this road is packaged as a business model. This road, when we continue now instituting tolling, like what we want to do on Rironi Mau Summit Road, what we are basically doing is increasing the cost of doing business. Because now the motorist will be made now to pay for the fuel, pay the road maintenance levy in the fuel, which they already pay, but on the side, they'll again be needed to pay an extra cost of using this road. Now, of note is that in whatever we are calling PPPs, public-private partnerships, they are actually not private. They are mostly entirely public. We are just running away from responsibility and liability. Because we package a road as a PPP, but the main investor in that PPP is the National Social and Security Fund, is NSSF. We have now gotten into a road where, and a slippery one for that matter, that anything consequential you see happening in Kenya is actually workers' money. The other day I raised about the issue of Talanta board. It was not a private sector board, it was public. Most of the people who invested in that board is still public money. And therefore, my take would be that the National Treasury and the government, they need to be a bit more creative in raising revenue to do critical infrastructure like you have done before, without necessarily doing experimentations that, upon further analysis, they seem to be reckless. This road will cost Kenyans over 175 billion shillings. Meaning per kilometer of road is 1 billion shillings. Why can't the government look at other avenues of raising money? Some are very low-lying fruits. The government of Kenya has a 35% stake in Safaricom. They can easily sell 10% of Safaricom and get 100 billion shillings, build and expand the road from Nairobi, Nakuru, even all the way, expand it without making it a tollable road for Kenyans to pay to use. And in that respect also, when we invest our own money, then we diminish the cost of doing business, because whoever does, let's say, importation of commodities headed to Uganda, they have to do comparisons between our Kenyan economy and using, for example, Dar es Salaam and other ports that are around. And for them to take goods to their own economies, they have to use roads or rail. Now, if you add on the cost of that transportation, what you are basically advising our neighboring countries to do is that they look for alternatives. And I don't think this is good for our economy. The government should expand the issue of privatization, get more money from the privatization, from the privatized farms, especially in the right valuation. We get personal interest out of these privatizations so that whatever gains that are gotten from this privatization goes into such noble projects. So the road should be built. The people who use the Nairobi-Nakuru road, they deserve a more expanded road. Kenya, there are avenues to do that road using internal resources, for example, by privatization. And I've given an example. A 10% of Safaricom at the right valuation would give us the money we need to expand the road, even not 170 kilometers, even further. And by doing that, we will have done it using internal resources that do not accrue more expenses. Because let's be factual, Kenyans. When we talk about PPP, some of them, the fallback position is dead. Or if it's not dead, then the farms that are coming through as private, then they are going to lose their money. And in this particular case, because the investment is not good for private sector, and because private sector are able to do much more analysis, and they cannot be coerced, that is why in all these projects, we are going to where the money is, without minding the workers' welfare. We are now forcing NSSF to be everywhere doing everything. And it is the same case with this particular project, that it is not public, it's not a PPP. If it's a PPP, it's public partnership. It's not a private public partnership. It's purely public, because NSSF money is public. Just the same way government is public, it serves the public. So let us be factual and embrace the projects and the fundings that do not overburden Kenyans in the next few years. Whatever we end up calling PPP projects, as I have kept saying, they are not actually PPP projects. A PPP project is the one that is viable, where it is the private sector actually vouching to invest their money in them. When we find the government of Kenya issue, let's say, an infrastructure board, it is a market-driven board. We fight over subscriptions. But when you find a board like Talanta, you find half of that money is NSSF that has been forced to invest. How is that private sector? It is still government money or workers' money coming through another mean. Even what is happening in Bomas, just do your own analysis. Why is the private sector not interested in these kind of experimentations? It is because out of their analysis, they are not viable in terms of commercial analysis. And that is the reason why NSSF, for sure, will lose their money in those PPP projects. For sure. They will not recover their money. But even the bigger element is that, why would the government force NSSF to invest in a road, knowing they will never recover their money, while still the government can optimize the resources that we have, invest in this road, and Kenyans can use it for free? Why can't the government do that? Why do we need to do all these kind of experimentations? And when we do it, when we fund it as Kenyans, it's cheaper. If you look at now per kilometer of road in the expansion of the road to Nakuru, it is over 1 billion shillings per 1 kilometer. It is over 1 billion shillings per kilometer. Why? Because finance cost has been loaded into this project. And finance cost will end up being more than the money that is actually going into the road. Why do we need to do that when Kenya has assets, while Kenya has alternatives of funding these roads without necessarily making them tolerable?